Hello everyone, welcome back for the next episode of Digital Marketing Talk. The last such video I made for this particular kind of rolling series. I kind of do one a month for these because they're a little bit longer than the normal 15-20 minute videos. So I've got a raft of things we're going to be running through today in no particular order. The kind of format of this series, if you like, is not like a digital marketing tutorial, so to speak. It's more of it's not even a talk show. It's more of just a way to kind of have a conversation about some of the things that are happening in the industry, either from a digital marketer's point of view or from a company's employer's point of view or a wider point of view. So that's kind of what it's about, and it's formal but it's relaxed. It's nothing too heavy. So I've got, as I said, a number of bulletin points in front of me. We're going to be running through and discussing them and talking about them. So the first one on my list is, don't get caught up in the trap of making videos if you haven't got a clear plan. Now, I can relate to this one, as I'm sure a lot of YouTubers can. In very early days, I used to make a lot of videos, and I didn't really have like a clear plan for the channel. I didn't have my niche kind of drilled down, perfectly. It's a bit better nowadays. It's all digital marketing, more or less, or if it's not that, it's definitely something technology orientated with regard to travel or something like that. So a lot of YouTubers don't have, especially the ones who are just starting out or who've been going for like 1 year, but don't have like a concrete plan, in terms of a direction they're going to take it. And just, as I've said to many people before, when you do YouTube, it's a bit of an investment. It costs a bit of money just to get the camera and the tripod and all the kit. You're probably looking at 800-900 quid, pounds sterling. Yes, you can get like a really cheap camera, but to get anything reasonable, mid-scale and all the different subscriptions you need to get going with regard to, Artlist or Epidemic Sound or Canva Pro or Adobe Express, and a few backup batteries, which I have as well, and a battery recharger. I appreciate the camera charges the batteries, but it's also handy to have a facility to have someone charge, because if you're using the camera to film indoors and the battery runs out, you need do you see what I mean? So a lot of people think that the more videos they make, somehow they're going to burst into social media stardom and stuff. And unless you've got a very clear strategy and you're doing the ads, because I think everyone knows it's near nigh impossible to get hundreds of thousands of subscribers organically. Maybe if you started in the past, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and you've got a channel where you're going all around the world and visiting far-flung places which people can only dream about, then yes, there's a chance you might get there. But there's so much competition now, you see. A lot of people want to be content creators, not just on YouTube, by the way, but on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, etc. And there's this competition. People are creating on X, and there's all these different SaaS platforms depending on what type of content you're making, and so it's much tougher now to be heard, to cut through that digital noise. And you need to have like a plan, and you need to look at where your money comes from now and where you want your money to come from in the future. Just making videos, senselessly, for the sake of making a video, I don't think it makes any sense. Yes, you might get a few more likes, but it's not going to make you, any more money. So my point is, without talking forever, have a plan, drill down on your niche. Look at what makes you money now. Look at what your skills are. Look at where you want to be in 5 years' time, maybe 10 years' time, and factor in things like your age and your location and different stuff. Because if you haven't got a plan, guys or gals, you're perhaps losing time and money, because it costs money to do YouTube. Your time is money, and you need to spend a bit of money as well. So I'll wrap up on that one there. Have a plan. Don't just make a video once a week thinking that that's going to give you the dream life as a content creator going around the world, because it's not. And then it's got more tough to do YouTube ads now. There's been some changes. I talked about that in some of my previous videos, but I won't go into that right now. So let's talk about platform convergence. Excuse me. This is an interesting one, because there's so many platforms out there now, and by that I mean social media channels, platforms where people can create an account, post their content, and many people are on more than one. So from a marketeer's perspective or a company's perspective, they need to be pushing out their content to many different channels, and looking at how they can link up the customer journey, through the multitude of channels. I mean, I'm not going to read them all out. You got like YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and it goes on. Even Telegram, and there's loads more, by the way. Some of them are regionalized. They target different areas regionally around the world, like Japan or India, Russia, whatever. So not why I'm promoting Russia, but I don't want to get into politics. But I'm just saying, a lot of these social media channels are regionalized. So what you tend to find is they are it's like they are kind of regionalized into kind of 4, 5, 6 different areas of the world. So by continent, basically, So a lot of the ones we use in the US and Europe are kind of very similar. Once you get over to Russia, again, that's not a political comment, but once you get over to Russia, they use like different stuff as well as some of the Western ones. In Asia, they use many different ones, like Line, Kakao Talk, and there's others as well. And with South America, they use different platforms. You see what I mean? So depending on if you're a company or a marketer or a marketing manager, depending on the products and the service and who your target audience is and where they live and what demographic they are, you might need to pivot. So just getting back to this convergence thing, a lot of marketers are having to think a bit more carefully about how they join up the dots, how they bring all these different fractured channels, if that's the best way I can put it, together. Because if they're just throwing all their money at Meta, they're missing out on so many different opportunities on like LinkedIn and X and and all the rest of them. So that's one thing that's going on, and it's easier said than done, by the way. For sure you can find like a posting tool that posts your content to multiple different platforms at once. That's dead easy, but to try and it's just something that's happening in the industry. I see it. I've seen it on Instagram recently. If you try and share some content, it gives you a multitude of different platforms to share that content to, which weren't there before. One of them was called Mix. One of them was called Go or GOO. And so I looked at some of these ones, like a Japanese one. So do you see what I mean? So these to kind of consolidate their ground, these platforms are having to and extend their reach, having to work in partnership, that's a good way to put it, with different social media platforms, and maybe link their systems up in different ways and stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I won't talk about that one forever, but I just thought I'd mention it. So next one, balancing automation with authenticity. Now this is an interesting one, because I can tell you now, being a digital marketer, all the rage, most of the conversation is about automation. When you're talking to a company, the first thing they'll ask you is, can you do automation? Can you set up email automation campaigns? Can you set up automated workflows and all this kind of stuff? And it all sounds great. The idea that once it's set up, you just kind of sit back and you let everything run by itself in an ideal world. But the reason I've mentioned this is because if everything is automated, literally everything, then customers can perhaps begin to feel a bit alienated, like there's no customer service, there's no personal service, and there's no authenticity, and it's all a bit clinical and driven by AI bots and AI programs and stuff. So there is this kind of need to balance these two things, what needs to be automated versus what can be automated. Perhaps two different conversations. Any brand, regardless of how big, will no doubt tell you that it's important to have some kind of channels open where customers can actually speak to people. It might be by phone, it might be by email, i.e. where they contact a human being and a human being gets back to them. There's different ways to do it. Maybe it might be through like an Instagram account, and it might be monitored, have staff in the office 9 to 5 who are replying to those messages. But if everything is automated and there's no way to make a complaint direct to a human being or speak to the management or anything like that, customers can feel a bit alienated or whatever. So it's good to be able to balance those things. It is a balancing act, because I appreciate with Amazon and eBay and stuff, people kind of expect it to be automated, and it feels a bit like that with Google Ads, to be honest, in some ways, although that's not a negative comment. But I'm just saying that people like to speak to a human being, and you can actually do that with Google Ads. I've got the phone number, you can phone them up and speak to them. So that, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that, but it's certainly more difficult with some of these companies like eBay and Amazon to actually get hold of a human being, without going through an extensive information gathering process. So just thought I'd mention that one. Next one, brand purpose and sustainability. Now, I know I've touched on sustainability in the past, and it is a growing area. A lot of stakeholders want to see that, the companies which have a stake or an interest in are making positive steps towards reducing their carbon footprint, their emissions. So this could be from distribution, it could be from the factories, it could be from the processes involved in production, any of those things. Could be from the offices, they could have like a senseless energy system or something that pumps out loads of emissions, costs loads, and doesn't offer the best value for money. It could be the packaging in the product, so a lot of stakeholders are looking to see a kind of improvement in this kind of like ESG area. So that's like environmental, social governance area. It's like a growing thing. But when I say brand purpose, for a lot of the case studies I've looked at, a lot of the companies that have done really well, the customers have been able to see the purpose in the brand. So as opposed to just it being a business model where they've got XYZ for sale at XYZ amount of money, on XYZ platform, just top of my head. If people can see like a purpose behind, a brand, and this is where storytelling comes in, how it started, why it started, how it's gone from strength to strength, and how it's benefiting like the local economy or a particular sector or a particular country, or that type of thing. That goes down really well. So just, I'm not saying that you don't do that already, but just have a think about like the brand purpose. So instead of just existing, it's a horrible way to put it, isn't it? Instead of just existing, if you can think about your purpose and try and think about the history of it, and how it started, and tell a good kind of brand story around how you're helping to for example reduce emissions, help local people into jobs, revive a failing industry, or modernizing a failing industry, or bringing some kind of new invention or innovation or technology, and align it with an existing business model, so you've got something a bit more up to date. Do you see what I mean? So just try and think about the brand purpose and try and tell that within your brand a little bit more, and I think that will resonate very well with your customers and your audience. So that's that one. We're getting there. Got my next one here. So digital marketing into, right, this one's a very interesting one. This one niggles me a lot. I mean, if you're a company, okay, or a business organization, charity, anything like that is looking for digital marketing contractors or anything like that, when it comes around having a conversation with them, stay balanced, because I've kind of had a few of these conversations recently where the people, looking for the expertise thought everything's in their favour, even though they weren't offering great money. And they've gone over the top with the formality. It felt like an interrogation, even though I have my doubts about the level of their expertise. I don't forget, I've been doing it for like nearly 15 years, and I can tell if somebody doesn't know, their CPC from their CTA to their CPA to their CPM. I know these things. I don't know all, but I know a lot. So, I did feel in this like recent experience that the people I was talking to, they're based in Cornwall, by the way, but they just kind of overstepped the mark. It was too aggressive. It felt like an interrogation. But one of the directors who was there was absolutely lovely, nice as pie, lovely lady. Really, really pleasant, nice, pleasant demeanour. One of the younger girls, she might have been the executive assistant or whatever. She had completely the wrong attitude. She was like really, she a bit overbearing, a bit too formal. Felt like an interrogation. It came across as if she felt she knew more than me. The point I'm making, guys and gals, is that if you're an organisation and you're carrying out like an interview for a digital marketing contractor or a senior digital marketing role, stay 50-50, stay balanced, because it's not just about you. It's an opportunity for the people you're speaking to, like the interviewee, to have a say as well. And don't forget, they're sizing you up as well. It's not all one way. They're sizing you up as well. They're thinking, is this organisation a load of rubbish? Do they know what they're talking about? Have they got any money? Are they doing well? What's the culture like? They're sizing you up as well. So don't just think, okay, and I'm saying this politely, don't just think it's all about your business, your brand, and that you're doing so great and that you can cherry pick and all the rest of it. Because I can tell you now, a lot of the people I've spoken to, they're having problems to get the expertise, and it's not one person that's said that, they're having problems to get the expertise because, I'll tell you why, because they haven't got the budget, maybe they haven't got the business model. Digital marketing is expanding so rapidly that people are charging higher and higher rates, and as I said before, it's about much more than just posting to Facebook, posting to LinkedIn, filming little shorts and little reels. That stuff's great, but there's more to it than that. There's a lot more to it than that. So they can't get the expertise, you see, because a lot of these people are working in London, Manchester, Birmingham, or they're working remotely from Lisbon or some other flash city on great money. So if you're paying like £25,000 and you're looking for some kind of AI PPC guru, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. The starting salaries for these roles are like 40-45 grand. You might get away with 35 if depending on the area. But what I'm saying is, if you're offering like, £30,000, £24,000, and you're, interviewing people coming across a bit too arrogant, a bit too proud, a bit too bold, a bit too overbearing, it's just not going to happen. If you just scroll through Indeed or digital marketing jobs or a lot of the other things, the average salary is like 40 grand. Some of them are higher, 50, 60 grand. Even the starting salaries now for jobs in the southeast are kind of 30, 35 grand. So if you're offering like 20 grand, 15 grand, 24 grand, 28 grand, anything like that, and you're, expecting the world and talking down to people who've been doing it for many years, it's not going to happen. Okay, so when I say it's not going to happen, but let me phrase it another way. The minimum wage is 24 grand, so full-time 24 grand. So if they can go elsewhere, you see, if they're going to, why are they going to work for you for 24 grand when they can go and clean caravans for 24 grand? So the point I'm making is, don't be too arrogant, don't be too bold, don't be too stupid in the way you approach the interview as a company I'm talking about. Show some respect, stand back, listen to what they're saying, take on board the facts, give the interviewee a chance to speak and to get their points and facts across as well, because you might not have it all right, you might think you do, but you might not. And it's a two-way. If you think about dating, it's a 50-50 thing, right? Which boy or girl goes out on a date where the girl is running the whole thing and, telling the boy what to buy and what time he's going home. And do you see what I mean? So you get the idea. So it needs to be more balanced, and then you'll have a bit more success for it. So I'll finish up on that one there. I've said enough. You got the point. You got the idea. Right, next one. Right, digital maturity and talent gaps. I've just touched on this a little bit. because, you know, I was talking about the interviews, mate, but it's kind of a bit of an overlap. Digital, because the pace of change is so fast that, you know, a lot of organisations are finding they haven't got the expertise, especially true with AI automation and smart AI tools and stuff. You know, yeah, they can find people to post. But by the way, posting to Facebook, posting to Instagram using like Hootsuite and Buffer is completely different. You know, and Sprout Search is completely different to, you know, some kind of senior marketing strategist who knows all about the different forms of AI. And I don't just mean ChatGPT, but there is a difference, and a lot of companies can't find the stuff, certainly not on their budget. So, but last one, like I said, you know, I'm talking, there's many more, but I don't want to make the video too long. So, generative AI integration challenges beyond content. So, what I mean by that is, like things like, you know, user generated AI content and stuff, you know, it's very generic, and beyond having a use for it in terms of content, you know, which people can, you know, perhaps use in a, like I just said, posting to Facebook, posting to Instagram, posting to TikTok, that kind of stuff. You know, beyond that, you know, it's a bit challenging to know how and where to use it, because, you know, if there's 100 other designs like that and you put it in your newsletter or on your website, you know, you might get found out. So, you know, it might be a bit bland, might not be as authoritative in terms of making your company look great and stuff. So that's just something to bear in mind. Like I said, there's so many AI tools out there now, and a lot of them are, you know, a lot of people are using it to generate art and content and stuff, and you know, it can be quite handy, especially if you combine it with different templates and tricks of a trade. You know, it can speed things up a little bit. But beyond content, you know, a lot of marketers are finding it a bit tricky to know how to integrate that user-generated content, AI content, into the rest of their workflows without, you know, some kind of difficulties or whatever, you know, i.e. who owns that content. Do you see what I mean? So thanks for listening. I will wrap up that one up there. I've talked for quite a while. I don't like to make these videos too long, but hopefully I've covered some good points and you've taken something away from it. So until next time, I normally make these types of videos once a month and other ones in between. So until next time, have a great rest of the week and look after yourselves. Enjoy the nice weather. Cheers. Bye.